Hey everyone, my name is Nikki Nagavi and I'm 18 years old. I play the violin and I am going to be going to the New England Conservatory class of 2023. So I took quite a few auditions this year. Just to give a quick background of my journey through auditions, I applied to a total of 12 schools, including the University of North Texas, Southern Methodist University, Rice University, the Curtis Institute, the Colburn Conservatory, Juilliard School, New England Conservatory, Indiana University, Baylor University, the Oberlin Conservatory, the McDuffie Center for Strings, and the Eastman School of Music. So out of the videos that I sent for pre-screening, I got to the live audition round for almost everywhere but Curtis, but I decided to only take 7 of those live auditions due to factors like class size or the location, or just having familiarity with the faculty there, having a personal connection with the teachers. It made me decide whether or not I should audition at those schools to even begin with. Anyway, I ended up choosing New England Conservatory of Music, go Penguins, and I'm very happy with my choice. Super excited to go there next year and begin the rest of my musical journey. So before really getting into the nitty-gritty of this video, I wanted to put out a disclaimer. Not everything I say may be applicable to everyone watching, nor may everything that I say be true to everyone's own experiences, because my experiences may not be relevant or apply to some other people's, but I thought that I would share my own very personal details so that you could kind of get a sense of how the process will be. First of all, how to choose schools to apply to. As I said earlier, out of the 11 schools that I passed the pre-screening round, I only decided to audition at 7 of them. When choosing schools that you want to apply to, it's really smart to have different levels of schools. So first of all, you want to have backup schools, which are the ones that you feel that you're pretty confident you're gonna get into them, not much hassle. I think it's really important, especially as a musician, to have these schools, because if you audition at these schools, it's kind of like a practice for some of the schools that you might be more nervous for, because unlike a lot of other majors, as a music major, you have to go in and live audition for most places. It's also important to have reach schools, because those are the schools that you might think that you won't get into, but it never hurts to try. You don't want to give up those opportunities at any point. And then the schools that you see as a good fit for yourself, and that if you work hard enough that you can get into, but it's still a good level school. Apart from that, you should definitely take into consideration the teacher there, and would you really enjoy studying with them for the next 4 years, and would you learn a lot? As well as the class size and the location of the university or conservatory or school, and the general university vibe, whether it's in like a huge university or if it's a standalone conservatory. All these factors should go into your decision process of where you want to apply. Personally, I applied to places with class sizes from 23 people in the program to thousands. And these are the reasons that I ended up deciding only to go to a few of the schools that I applied to. Because honestly, and I regret this, when I was applying to schools, I kind of just, made a list of where the, norm places to apply are, not really taking into account my own considerations of what I want in a university. I'm a person who doesn't want a super huge class size, but also not very small. I'm looking for a school that's in a city, things to do nearby, whether or not you have family nearby, and how easy or difficult it is to be able to visit them. Also, when I was applying, realized that I had maybe too many backup schools and you really only need one or two. However, I decided, why should I, spend extra money and time to travel there when I can just stay in the same area and just go to school in one of these places if that's not necessary. So the second topic is audition, repertoire, and requirements. So the norm for most music programs for a violinist includes Bach, Paganini, concerto, and scales. For cellos, for example, they substitute Paganini for Popper etudes, and similar things for viola, bass, any other even wind instruments. I'd say for a lot of wind instruments, they require excerpts from different orchestral pieces, but what I can say among everyone, which is uniform, is the requirement of a concerto, which is, when you really think about it, the big meat of your sandwich, because it's something that you can choose so personally and really show great artistry within that. My audition repertoire included Bach's Partita number 2, D minor, the entire thing, Paganini Caprice number 20, the Cacciatorian Concerto, entire thing, and the first movement of Beethoven's Sonata number 1 for violin and piano. I think that's it. I'm not missing anything, right? Oh, I am missing something. Subito by Lutosławski, which is not in the general guideline of things that I gave you. Neither was the Beethoven, but some schools require extra things. The Juilliard School required a modern piece if your concerto wasn't within a specific time period. Different schools require sometimes just showpieces. Some schools require several movements of your concerto and some schools don't. So it's really smart, if before you even choose what you want to play, to make a spreadsheet or a list of all the schools that you're thinking about applying to and exactly what they require in their auditions, so that you can choose pieces that overlap in requirements and you don't have to prepare too much unnecessary music, because the music that you are preparing is already a lot, and you really want to be able to have quality over quantity, because juries don't even listen to everything you play. So what you do end up playing, make sure that you practice it a lot and practice beforehand. I think you definitely want to begin preparing your college audition repertoire before the school year starts, perhaps in summer, maybe a bit at the end of your junior year. Definitely don't leave it to the last minute. Procrastination is not key in this at all. You will not succeed. Number 3, general tips for taking your pre-screening recordings. I took my pre-screening recordings in this small hall in downtown Dallas, which is where I have my youth orchestra rehearsals. It was easy to rent out, and I had a wonderful collaborative pianist there with me who was such a big help throughout the entire process, Yuri Iwasaki. So your pre-screening recordings will most likely not be done in 1 day or 2 days, even 3 days, depending on how much repertoire you have. But I can tell you one thing, you're not alone. Nobody is perfect, and it's highly unlikely that you'll be able to play all of your repertoire perfectly back to back that you need to submit. Now, the pre-screening repertoire that you need to submit is usually less than what they require at a live audition, just so that they can get a general taste of your musical style and whether or not they want to take you in. They're not looking for perfection, but rather potential, whether you'd be a good fit at the school or not, because they know some people just might not be that good at recording. Some people might cheat and not actually submit themselves playing. They might have this really complicated editing, but regardless, your pre-screening is not life-threatening. I submitted videos that were not perfect. I honestly don't think I prepared some of my material soon enough, namely my Bach and Paganini. But regardless, I was very happy with the results that came out of that. For general advice, the location of where you take your recording does not have to be a professional recording studio. My recordings were not professionally done. I didn't use a special microphone, although I did buy a few to test them out, but just came down to the conclusion that my own phone, although it is a nice phone, I had an iPhone XS at the time, was able to capture nuances and volume differences, tone, and just general resonance in the entire room. So I did not need any kind of professional making the video for me, or even for it to be in a special location. Just as long as there's a nice clean background with a piano for your accompanist, depending on what you're going to be auditioning with, as well as good lighting and generally good sound in the hall. You also want to make sure that your accompanist is someone that you feel very comfortable with, someone who has enough time to stay there and the patience to retake and retake, because like I said, it may not always be perfect on your first try. Now this I cannot stress enough. Do not procrastinate your pre-screening recordings. I swear it will be the most stressful thing, because here you are with just a few days remaining. Although you've practiced and everything musically is ready, you have to go to a separate location. You have to gather a few people to go to that location to help you out with the recording, set up your equipment and rent it out. So I had a goal that I would have at least some recordings ready a month before they were due. This gave me my entire Thanksgiving break. Most of them are due December 1st. A few of them can be in November and a few in January, but December 1st is the majority deadline. My goal was to complete them by November 1st. This gave me my entire Thanksgiving free. I finished all my essays and applications before then too. Got to spend time with family, while a lot of my friends were frantically typing away at their keyboards, writing essays, and a lot of them taking recordings until 12 midnight. I feel really happy that I did what I did, although it may have taken a little more preparation in the beginning. It made the whole process overall a lot more stress-free. Basically what I did was create a due date for myself set for November 1st. And what I required myself to finish was just full recordings of each thing that I needed to submit, whether or not they were perfect or the ones I wanted to submit. Most of them I thought were good enough. There were a few that I re-recorded in the first few days of November, but after that I was finished and I was able to send them off right after. As far as choosing which recordings are your best ones, it might get a little confusing to listen to yourself play the same thing over and over again in different ways. So I would definitely consider sending them to a trusted musician, such as your teacher, a local orchestra director, or anyone else you think would have a fresh ear and be able to give you their own advice on which one they think is the best. Now, for your applications, most schools require, just like any normal university, to see your essays, grades, and recommendation letters. This, just like taking your pre-screening recordings, is also important not to procrastinate on. In my own experience, and I'm not necessarily saying that this is the truth, because it could change. It could have just been for my year or just for the schools to which I applied, just from what I've heard from other people. But as a music major, if you're applying to a conservatory, although the essays, grades, transcripts matter, the amount to which they matter may not be as high as you think they are. For sure, the pre-screening recordings are #1 priority. I would say after that is your recommendation letters. You have a few people that you have asked way before the deadline so that they don't feel rushed into anything. And if they submit their recommendation letter without you seeing it directly to the place to which you're applying, that's always better, because otherwise, if colleges know that you have seen the recommendation letters that were written for you, they could easily say, oh, the person who wrote this had to write something nice because the person for whom it was written was going to see the letter. So it may not be something genuine, and the recommendations may count for less than if they just go directly to the university without you seeing them. For your essays, it's important to really be genuine and get your own ideas out, because there are so many generic, same kind of ideas and answers that a lot of kids give. If you have something unique to say, your application automatically becomes unique. However, your grades and transcripts for just conservatory-based schools that don't have a huge emphasis on academics as well, it's mostly all music, I would say if there are 2 applicants who have same scores on their pre-screening recordings and their recommendation letters, and it's just down to these 2 and only one of them can make it, then they might go to essays and grades and see where they can weed out one person. Again, I cannot stress this enough. Don't procrastinate. It just makes everything a lot harder and a lot more stressful when it shouldn't be, because this is a process when you're thinking about what you want to do for the rest of your life and making some really big decisions. So you want to make sure that you have the time to make the right ones. But as far as schools of music within universities like Rice is a pretty academically high-level institution. So for places like that, your essays and grades might be examined a bit more than at other schools who don't have an emphasis on academics as much as a university might. So after you get your results, you're gonna start planning. Where am I going to go for my live auditions and what dates? For travel scheduling, usually within your application, they're gonna ask what your first and second preference dates are for your auditions, for your live auditions, if you get through. And I think for my own family, this was the most difficult part probably, because it was just like getting through a maze, figuring out a puzzle. What days you should go for this college and what day for this one, and how long you're gonna stay, and whether you have enough time to relax and rest before your audition. And the tickets and everything, it is not gonna be easy. Prepare yourself. Saying this from beforehand. However, you really wanna make sure you sit down with your parents and decide on which dates work for you guys the best to go to several different locations. How much school you'll be missing and when, because that is important as well, especially for public schools. I had my 2 local auditions first. They were on the same day, but they were both around the Dallas-Denton area, so that wasn't too difficult, and same repertoire as well. It was good because it was kind of like a much lower stress environment because I knew most of the faculty, as well as the rooms in which I was auditioning. It was all very familiar to me. After that, we drove to Rice University. Because I live in Dallas, it was an easy drive there and back one day. After that audition, the next day when we drove back, flew to the Eastman School of Music, stayed there for 2 days, auditioned. Staying there for 2 days is nice because, well, the day that you get there, the rest of the day you kind of get familiar with the environment, see the school. If they have any informational meetings, attend those. Settle into your hotel or family if you're staying with family, and practice a bit if you want to, especially letting your instrument get used to the weather, because it is a huge transition from hot and humid Houston to a very cold Rochester, New York. From there, I went to the New England Conservatory in Boston. It was a pretty short flight because Rochester, New York and Boston, Massachusetts aren't that far away. And after that, I came home. I didn't want to pack in too many different schools into this one audition round because at a certain point, you'll start getting tired yourself and you don't want to let anything from the outside influence your audition. After that, I went to the Colburn Conservatory, like the next week. We have family around there, so we stayed with them a few days before and after the audition, which was nice. And then I went to Juilliard for the audition there. This was beginning of March. So that was my journey. I missed a lot of school, and I actually had to stay after school and make up hours. But of course, it was all necessary, and if you think you might have a problem with the attendance policy of your school, just go talk to some administrators and explain the situation and how it was very important that you audition live and you have to travel in order to do that. They, most of the time, will understand. I was very lucky because they understood and they helped me out a lot in how I can make up hours. So scheduling all these plane tickets and hotel reservations, something you should sit down and do with your family, just so that you make sure that everyone's happy with the situation, because these are very important auditions and it's worth it to take the extra day if you need to, if you think you need to relax before your audition, or if you think that it's too much packed into one trip. Just do what you think is right for yourself and your family. Now, the fun part, what to pack. So I generally packed the same thing for every place I went to, except for clothing, depending on where we're going. You know, if it's really cold or really hot, if it's raining or not, snowing or not. So I had my clothes, my toiletries, extra strings, all my music, anything that I thought I might need. I mean, it's a 2-3 day trip, so it's not anything super long, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So bring what you think you might need, because you always want to be prepared for any situation. I also had the same audition outfit for every single school at which I auditioned, because it kind of gave me like a mental feeling of, oh, you know, the blouse and pants are on, you know, it's showtime. It became like a routine for me. The same makeup for every school I auditioned at, I used the same makeup routine. I think it's just really important to not make it like a huge deal for yourself, not try to make one school really different than the rest, because you just want to feel as comfortable as possible. And even the night before, sleeping at a certain time, getting a certain amount of hours in, your night routine, you know, if you want to watch something, if you want to read something, if you want to practice a little bit the night before, that's a good idea. Just to make everything uniform. Again, you're going to be in a new hotel and a new environment each time, but by the end of this, you'll be a traveling pro. Now for your live auditions. For actually calming down the nerves the day before and the day of your audition, chances are you might have some friends or just people that you've seen in your other auditions that might be at the same places, because most people are interested in doing the same thing. I had friends at almost every place I auditioned, some of which I wanted to hang out with and see because I hadn't seen them in a long time. But don't do that right before your audition, even the day of. I always prefer to do it afterwards so I wouldn't get distracted from anything. If you want to do something the night before, you can make it, you know, a really casual, low-key, not too long. Don't use up all your energy. But I would definitely say afterwards, because it's kind of like something you can look forward to for after the audition. And you want to make yourself comfortable everywhere you go. So really take some comfortable clothes, pack accordingly to the weather, of course. Snacks are a good idea as well. If you're ever walking around the campus of where you're auditioning at. Now, usually at each audition, they have an assigned warm-up room, typically half an hour before your scheduled audition time. This room is available to you privately, and you have the full half an hour to use it in whatever way you'd like. What I usually do is start with some scales, the ones that I have designated as my scales to play, if they ask me to play any scales, and then ones that are in the same key as the pieces that I'm playing. Then I go through each piece and choose different spots that I feel like I want to just make sure I have under my fingers, because at that point there's really no time to relearn everything or change anything. It's just making sure that you feel comfortable playing. So I designate those spots and go through the same thing at every single audition, as well as practice the openings of each piece that I'm playing. My concerto and my etudes, my Bach, everything. Because I feel like once you're able to play a good opening, then the rest of the piece is able to flow pretty well. You're confident after you have that good beginning, because if you mess up in the beginning of your piece, first of all, that's the judge's first impression of you. And second of all, throughout the rest of the piece, you're focusing on that initial mistake and could cause even more mistakes through the rest of the piece. The warm-up room also serves as a time to calm down and realize why you're there and what you're about to do. The routine you have in a warm-up room is just like the same routines that you have coming into the city. It gives you the ability to feel comfortable, and it gives you a sense of familiarity with what you're about to do. This all leads up to the final moment of truth, the audition. So in your audition, typically you'll stand there for about 1 to 2 minutes before your assigned time, waiting for the last person to finish up. And keep in mind, the person going right before you always sounds really good, no matter what. Your brain plays a trick on you because you're nervous to make you think that they're so much better than they really are, and that you're not even comparable to them, when in reality that's not the case. Every single person is just as nervous as you are walking through those doors. When you go in, collect yourself, say hello to the jury, and begin playing, because you're about to present what you've been working on for months. That's basically the end. After you're done with your audition, you'll walk out of the room. You might have messed up a little bit, or you might have played a perfect audition, but keep in mind that judges aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for potential that you have within you as a musician to get better, and whether or not they would like to teach you and help harness that potential. Throughout the entire process, I learned that there are several very important things to consider before you even start preparing. 1, have a backup plan. Backup plan meaning different career path if that ever becomes necessary. You never know what's gonna happen in 5 years from now. You may lose interest in what you're doing. You may have an injury and not be able to continue what you're doing, among other experiences that do not allow you to practice music anymore. In which case, it's really important to have something to fall back on, another career or interest or hobby that you can pursue and make that your career. Even knowing whether or not you want to audition for music to begin with, you can figure that out using your summers. Summers are very crucial times to take advantage of. You can get involved in your communities and really put yourself out there through internships, volunteering, attending festivals, taking classes in all diverse types of fields, so that you can really know what exactly you're interested in. I attended the Bowdoin International Music Festival in the summer of 2018 and the Malaga Summer Festival in the summer of 2017. And lastly, hold practice auditions. You can perform for your parents, your siblings, your stuffed animals, your pets, and your friends. And you can perform for teachers too in order to get feedback. And even if someone isn't a musician and is listening to you, they are still able to give feedback. Because a lot about being a musician isn't just technique and playing the right notes, but it's really about having the human aspect, which is something that everyone can understand. Because the purpose of being a musician is to deliver to an audience and to get people connected, no matter what their background is and what they do with their lives, how much familiarity they have with music or not. And being able to accomplish that is a true gift, and it's the gift that you should always strive for. So for the final part of this video, I'd like to take the time to answer questions that my followers on Instagram have sent to me regarding the audition process. First one, how do you know that you're good enough to pursue music as a career? Well, to me, it's not really about being able to hit all the notes or have all the right technique. I think that you're good enough once you have the drive to do it every day and really love what you're doing and what you're playing. How do you know if you're good enough to go get accepted into a certain school? Honestly, this is the cheesiest answer, but you don't know until you try. Some of the professors at a certain school that you think is very high level might be looking for something specific to your own playing. And if you exhibit that within your audition, then you'll be bound to get in. So definitely try, it never hurts to try. Now going off of that, how do you manage payments for the auditions? Not gonna lie, it's a lot of money applying not only online through their application software, but also getting passed to that live audition and traveling there to audition. It's not very cheap. However, if you think about it as an opportunity to attend a school and receive a scholarship that would far outweigh however much you spent for the audition, it can seem quite worth it. When did you start preparing for auditions? My concerto I'd been playing for over a year at that point, but that was just the concerto because I thought it was a good fit. And of course I had played other pieces in between then and the audition, but
I just kept that one up in the background, so it was something comfortable that I had already played and I thought could represent myself well. But the rest of the pieces, I probably started practicing in the beginning of summer after my junior year or the end, so the beginning of the new school year of senior year. For a bachelor application in music performance, which is the priority, accuracy or interpretation? Well, really when you think about it, a lot of people can play the right notes, but not a lot of people can interpret it in a unique way. And of course, accuracy is important, but to a point. If you're comparing two people who are both very accurate, maybe one is a little lower than the other one, but this person has obviously way more interpretation and musicality in their playing, that person with the musicality will have the higher score. Any tips on dealing with nerves? Yes, it's more of a mental thing. It's more of realizing that you've already done all the preparation and really you're just here to exhibit it. Not so much, obviously there will be nerves because a lot of times if someone is nervous for something, that just means that it's important to them, the results are important and that they matter. So accepting the nerves and knowing how to contain them is probably the best way. Myself, for example, I start getting cold and I start shivering before something important is about to happen, like an audition. So I'd have like a cup of coffee that I could keep my hands around, or I'd be wearing something warm, something comfortable. How do you take care of yourself through a rigorous audition process? Sleep is a number one, very important thing. I think also keeping myself warmed up all the time but not overplaying, because you don't want to injure any muscles or nerves last minute. Just doing things in proportion and not overworking yourself. Enjoy the process. It's really enjoyable process. Ways to learn about schools you've never heard of. Definitely get out there and talk to different people, because word of mouth is huge in the music world and you can learn about places in which you've never heard of before just by talking to someone who might have a friend who's there or might be there themselves, and it could end up being the school that you end up at. What preparation/practice habits are needed realistically to get into elite schools? Honestly, consistent practicing is the number one thing. You can't get somewhere that has very high competition if you're not among the top, so there will always be someone better than you, but if you try to stand out in a good way by being prepared, then you should have a pretty good chance of getting into the school that you want to get into. How do you choose what piece to play for auditions? Well, this is a tricky one because you want to display your own character, your own strengths in a piece, but also have diversity within your repertoire, because if you play only one style, one type, or one speed, one time period, then that wouldn't be so appealing to the jury, because they'd say, okay, well they can do this, but can they do anything else? That's why usually they've built in the audition repertoire to have things from different time periods and different composers so that they prevent that kind of issue at an audition. Should you get to know your potential professors before choosing a school? Yes, absolutely 100 times over yes, because thinking about it, especially your private teacher, your studio teacher, you're going to be with them for the next 4 years, and college is a time when your brain is still absorbing information, not fully developed, and you really learn a lot from the person whose studio you're in and adopt their way of playing, learn their tips and tricks and the repertoire path that they want you to follow. So if it's someone that you don't completely agree with, then that could potentially be pretty detrimental to your 4 years, and you might end up having to transfer somewhere else. So going into your university knowing exactly who you want to study with, and them also knowing you, could help you get in a lot easier, because there's a personal connection and they already are like, oh, this person is good, I would want them in my studio. Finally, what factors besides money helped you decide between so many equally amazing schools? I'd say definitely the teacher, which goes off of the last point, the faculty, location. For my own personal preferences, the proximity to family. Family is a really important thing to me, as well as the size of the school or university, the surrounding environments, and the types of students also attending that school. It's a very personal decision. College auditions should not be taken lightly because they can be super influential on the person you turn out to be.
With that being said, I thank you so much for watching my audition basics video, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.